With Russia's attack on Ukraine on February 24th, Poland became a frontline state. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians sought rescue from the turmoil of war. Poles exemplarily passed the test of solidarity. Transportation, humanitarian aid, and accommodation were organized. Historical backstories were put aside. Ukrainian mothers, children, and the elderly found shelter in our homes. Huge humanitarian support also flowed to the fighting Ukraine. Since the beginning of the conflict, more than 8.5 million people have entered Poland from the Ukrainian direction. Admittedly, Polish people are doing a lot for us. On April 11th, the report of the subcommittee for the re-examination of the Smolensk air accident was presented. It found the presence of explosives on many elements of the Tu-154M plane. The research unequivocally invalidated that there was an assassination at Smolensk on April 10, 2010. It accurately identified the location, time, and sound of the explosion that destroyed the wing and ignited the crash. On April 20th, there was a series of methane explosions at the Pniówek coal mine in Pawłowice. 9 miners died, 30 were injured, 7 were declared missing. 3 days later, a similar tragedy occurred at the Zofiówka coal mine in Jastrzębie-Zdrój. 10 miners died. In mid-April, the law on homeland defense came into force. It allows for an increase in defense spending to 3% of GDP, as well as the use of extra budgetary funds for armaments. As a result of its arms purchases, Poland has a chance to have the strongest army in Europe within a few years. We want peace, so we are preparing for war. In the Polish Senate, on the other hand, a motion was presented in May after months of effort to waive Tomasz Grodzki's immunity and consequently bring corruption charges against him by the prosecutor's office. The upper house of parliament rejects the document. The speaker can still shield himself with immunity, which does not prevent him from suing journalists for reporting on the envelope scandal. Very many journalists have reached the materials and want to cover the story. On June 2nd in Warsaw, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announces the approval of the Polish National Reconstruction Plan. The disbursement of funds is made conditional on the achievement of so-called milestones. The impasse over the disbursement of funds continues. Work on the construction of a physical barrier on the Polish-Belarusian border was completed on June 30th. In the summer, there was an environmental disaster on the Oder River. In a stretch of several hundred kilometers, there was a mass fish die-off. In October, inflation reached a record high of 17.9%. The reason for such a high inflation rate, also observed in other countries, is the Russian war in Ukraine, the energy blackmail applied by Russia at the end of 2021, and the money that was pumped into the economy during the pandemic to keep jobs, for example. The past year was a landmark year in terms of the implementation of strategic infrastructure projects. The Vistula Spit cross-section was opened, as well as a gas pipeline connecting Poland and Slovakia. The company Central Communication Port signed agreements with contractors for the project worth nearly 10 billion zloty. Contracts were also signed for the construction of nuclear power plants in Poland. The opening of the Baltic Pipe pipeline, which has made us fully independent of Russian gas, should be considered the most significant project. Thanks to all these investments, also thanks to the foresight of the late Polish president, Professor Lech Kaczyński. On November 20th, the effects of the ongoing war in Ukraine affected us much harder than before. 2 Polish people were killed in Przewodów as a result of a shell explosion. Poland, both before and after the outbreak of war in Ukraine, provided significant military support to the country. Germany, previously considered a leader in Europe, presented the opposite attitude at first. This made Warsaw's importance grow in the eyes of the West, especially the United States. In late March, after the NATO summit in Brussels, U.S. President Joe Biden visited Poland. In turn, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, returning from his first foreign visit since the outbreak of war, met with Polish President Andrzej Duda in Rzeszów.